A new sensation. Why the song that beat the Beatles has everything to do with why your business isn't growing. That's a wrap. I said it out loud. And then it kind of hung there in the air of the room for a second. It was odd. Like waiting for someone to tell me I was wrong. Scott just nodded slowly and deliberate, and the way a man nods when something is genuinely finished. And he knows it. Yeah, he said, you don't have to be done anymore with anything else. And I stood there absorbing that sentence. Oh, because I took it all in like it was just this feeling that we were gone. We were done. The album was finished. Not almost done. Not one more session. Every single track, every layer, every decision we had been circling around and guessing and second guessing and refining for months now was locked up and in the can. Somewhere in the world, there's always this sense of sanguine as the lid was put on the can. This specific kind of silence that follows these moments, like not just an empty silence, but a full one. The kind of silence that's made up of everything that you know that went into getting there. Then we all hugged. And I want to be specific about this because it's not just one of those hugs that are like, hey, see you later. It was not the quick sideways half embrace that you give someone at a networking event or anything like that. It was the kind of hug where it's like, oh man, it's Christmas, it's Thanksgiving. It's like, we're done with the dishes. Everything's done. We're going, we're leaving. Coats are getting on. We're warming up the cars. We'll never see you again for another year or maybe more. The next time we're all together, it's not guaranteed. Scott Sherrard and Charlie Martinez, who are helping us, shuffled out of that studio in Harlem like the family at the end of a holiday, carrying the warmth of something that we shared, the weight of something ending at that exact same time. Now, I always feel the same way. When I step back and I look into the real world from these sessions, these recording sessions, there is this register in my mind that never fully resolves. It's a bittersweet chord, they might say, because I'm generally close to the world of this musician business, closer than most people who are not in it will ever get. And at the same time, I'm not fully soldiered into it the way Scott and Charlie are. I get to go home. They do not really for a long time, because here's what their year will look like. At this point forward, Scott would go on, Charlie would go on to the road the rest of the year. Every theater, every festival, every stage, every booking agent across the whole world is reaching for them and putting them in a stage, from Fort Wayne to Fort Lauderdale, and every city in the air that they travel, and the vans that they take between the hotel rooms and the airports, the meals, all the things that they need to manage to help real bands. Now, Scott's in Little Feat, obviously. He's been helping me in the last production of these albums, and it's been wonderful to work with him. And Scott has obviously been a huge influence on how we put out our production. And Charlie Martinez is the front end for Foghat and does all the sound for Foghat, so he's traveling with them. And Scott in particular runs logistics for these bands, or his band at least, running 6 or 7 people to coordinate their flights and the venues and schedules and hotel rooms and whatever you can think of. Sound checks, radio tours, all of it's invisible. All of it happening right after the 90 minutes that are played that one evening on a Friday or a Tuesday or Monday or tonight in Peoria, or wherever they are. Scott puts these words into a little conversation over our lunch that we had while we were in between songs recording. And it stayed with me. We're sitting there at Whole Foods, getting our food, come back and sit in the studio. And by the way, there is a Whole Foods in Harlem, which blows my mind because it's in the middle of like literally, very odd characters, and your first reaction is like, okay, this doesn't really make sense, but it's changing. It's very much changing in Harlem. In fact, it's unique. The fact that there are people in there that are the same caliber in Whole Foods that you find in Whole Foods in any other, let's just call it wealthy town, who are snippy and asking you to stay in line proper. I'm like, oh my God, this is in the middle of Harlem, deep Harlem. Anyways, money's going in there, and it's moving, which again is its own entire story for another conversation because it's such a unique area. Anyway, so there we were, the two of us sitting in the most unique position of um, this very working class neighborhood, um, eating our overpriced sushi, out of our plastic containers that cost more than a full meal at a diner for 4 people. Anyways, talking about music and money and the invisible machinery behind it. Scott looked at me mid-bite and said, what I had already known, but it already hits hard, and it hits so plainly. He said, nobody sees the part of the touring. Nobody sees the part that's not the show. The 3 days you sit in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with literally nothing to do because the schedule has a gap and there's nowhere to go. And you're just waiting. The layovers, the delayed flights, the coordination, all of these things. Human beings are tough to move across the country, especially when they're 80 years old. It's much larger, much less romantic than a tour poster makes it look. Goes on forever, he said, like a river, an endless river. And if you look at Scott's Substack, you'll see it is Scott's Endless River. It says planning and executing and managing and problem solving all across just to produce that 90 minutes you see that the audience paid for, and that 1 hour that gets posted in Instagram. And then the conversation moved to something else, a young artist. This young artist he had been working with, and the way he described her, you could tell she was good. A genuine admiration that I don't see out of Scott very often. Something that he doesn't throw around casually. She was beautiful. She was talented. Way beyond the normal talent. It's hard to put in words. A singer, the kind of voice that makes a room stop. He had been bringing her through sort of the ranks, helping her develop her sound and her material, sharpening her instincts, doing the work. Someone who genuinely cares, believed in what she was doing, and believed she was capable of doing big things. And then he shook his head. He said, couldn't really help her. The way she needed help was different. Not because of anything lacking in talent. He said she might be the best thing going right now. But without promotion, she was nothing. And getting her material out in the world, into the industry, into today's marketing demands was incredibly difficult. It was a move that was beyond his capability to deliver. Everything, I mean everything about the landscape had changed. She shifted her thoughts from successful to maybe successful to I don't know what to do. She was extraordinary, definitely. And she would never make it, not without the right type of help behind her. And I sat with that for a moment, and then I told him what I had quietly been building in my brain in the back of my mind for months. Our Spotify numbers keep going up, Scott. We're sitting at over 10,000 streams a month. And at that point, we're still climbing. Scott looked back at me, and I knew this was happening. He looked up from his little plastic sushi container and said, yeah, but you know what you're doing. You're a marketer right there. That's the sentence. That's the entire thesis of everything. I'm about to walk you through some thoughts here because in that little sentence is the thing that most people, every creative, every service, every industry refuses to sit along with because they can't actually learn from doing it on their own because it's impossible. See, some genuinely talented touring bands, people who have been on the road for, let's say, 10 years, who have real fans in real cities, who've earned the reputation night after night in clubs and theaters, do not have the same global listenership that we even have. We have, sure, a little regional rock band, but we don't have a label. We don't have anything. We don't have a publicist. We don't have PR people. Never done a national tour. We play regional shows and we have a little fun here and there. We open for some major acts. We make music that people believe that we think that are, pretty darn good. And we put it into the world. And we have listeners on every continent. Not because our songs are better than everybody else's. We're not competing for the ears of every single person in every single situation. But we're competing on a platform. We're good enough. We're good enough to be there. And I want you to hear this phrase the way I mean it. Not as a concession, but as a principle. Good enough, when it's matched with real and systematic promotion, counts for more than brilliant with nothing behind it. That is not a comfortable truth that people like to sit with, but it is an accurate one, and I have watched it prove itself out again and again and again over the last many years of running businesses in a way I cannot argue with. Whether the last album launched, I went to work immediately. When I launched this album, I went to Facebook. I went to YouTube. I ran some simple paid promotion. Not very expensive, targeted, sequenced, got the songs in front of the right people, triggered the algorithms, got everything running. And the moment it started triggering them, I actually thought that it would stop. But guess what? I put the fuel directly on the fire right at the beginning, because the beginning is the only time when the fuel makes the kind of difference. It compounds it later. Most people wait, they release something, and then they wait, see if it moves, and before they decide whether or not to promote it. That's the problem. It's backwards. The window where promotion has its most leverage is the window when most people are standing in with their hands in their pockets. And then something happened that I have watched and unfold slowly over months, the way a photograph develops in a dark room. The promotion stopped. I didn't put any more money in, but the growth did not. 1,000 streams became 5,000 a month. 5,000 months became 10,000 a month. And I'm not spending any money on this. I'm sitting here today not running a single ad. But the numbers keep growing. They keep climbing. The songs have legs of their own now. People are saving them in playlists. Those playlists are being shuffled into other listening sessions of other people who have never searched for us. Those people are building their own playlists. And our songs are riding inside of all of them, traveling through the habits and the moods of strangers in cities I've never even thought about. Playing through speakers someplace, headphones somewhere, commuters, kitchens, 500, upwards of 600-700 times a day, all across the world. I cannot point to a map without looking at it twice thinking, wow, that is what a flywheel looks like when it actually is moving under its own momentum. Now, I want you to understand something. This is not a music story. I'm just trying to correlate this to business. This is a business story. The flywheel does not care about what you are selling. Songs, roofing, medical procedures, software, financial aid, services, handmade furniture, does not matter. The mechanism works the same, identically across all of them. You build something genuinely good, enough to deliver on its promise. You promote it hard and consistently at first, in the beginning, before the flywheel has any speed. And then you get in front of enough momentum. And you can get in front of enough people that you've promoted to. And systematically, there's efficiencies that are built, enough to cut through the noise in a marketplace that's never seen your stuff before. Never in human history has this many voices screaming for attention at the same time happened in the market. And if you were looking at this, if you're looking at this from a real perspective, is understanding the network effect that happens when you start to promote yourself in the very beginning and how it takes impact and how it affects other people, right? The math starts doing the work that no ad budget can replace. Word of mouth is not magic, it's math. It's predictable. It's the outcome of enough exposure to the right people at the right time. It happens after, not before. That is the part people keep getting backwards. Now, let me tell you about a song in late 1969, a modest, unhurried, almost laughable simple song that climbed to the top of the Billboard charts and knocked off the Beatles, Jackson 5, Led Zeppelin, and Elvis Presley. Just sat on top of all of it, like it belonged there. And it had been waiting for everyone else to move. The song was Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And if you had handed that sheet music with no context and no backstory and asked them to predict whether it would outsell everything, the most iconic artists of the generation that were right there, putting out some of the best material ever in history of music, no one would have believed you. It was mellow, gentle, almost to the point of being sleepy. 3 minutes of something that sounded like it had been written on a Tuesday afternoon without much pressure behind it. But that song was in a movie. Not just any movie, but Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. One of those films that people walked out of talking for years. One of those stories that landed itself into the cultural labyrinth, the memory of a generation, and stayed there. And there's one scene in that film that nobody has forgotten who has watched it. It's Paul Newman on a bicycle, riding around like the world has no edges, carefree and loose, and completely alive. And that song is playing underneath it all, like the whole thing had been planned out and dreamed up together. That song and that scene are inseparable now. You cannot hear one without seeing the other. The movie was not an advertisement. It was a vehicle. It carried that song into the ears and the hearts of millions of people who had otherwise just scrolled right past it on the radio dial without a second thought. Without that scene, without that film, without that vehicle, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head lives in a drawer in a songwriter's apartment, and nobody knows the name. So I want to leave you with the little same question that has been turning over since Scott and I looked at each other after we had that Whole Foods sushi in Harlem. And he said, "You're a marketer. So what movie are you putting your product in? What is the vehicle that carries what you have built into the lives and awareness of people who do not know you?" Because the song is not enough. The service is not enough. The talent is not enough. I do not care about what it is. There has to be a scene. There has to be something that brings the right people to it before the flywheel ever has a chance to start moving. Find that vehicle, build it, with the same care you put into building the thing itself, your service, your product. Get your song into the scene, and then let what you made do the rest of the work. The lesson learned here is the world is not running short on talented people, or talented services, or talented structure, or products, or anything that's out there. It's the people who understand that the talent is only the beginning of the education. The equation you see is that the brilliant and the invisible loses to good enough every single day, every single time, everywhere. Promotion is not a necessary evil attached to creative work or products or services. It's the other half of the work, the other full half that determines whether or not everything you've poured your little heart into gets heard, seen, or used by anyone at all. The flywheel is real, and it's available to anyone willing to push hard enough. In the beginning, before it has any speed of its own. But it will not start itself. You have to find your bicycle scene. You have to find your voice. You have to find your movie. You have to get your song into the intention and the consistency before the moment closes. Do that and then step back. Because once the flywheel is turning, the math takes over. And the math does not lie and does not need your help. That's the truth. And the truth is that you can't stop once you get started because the math always wins.